Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you joining me here today, as it is every day, to talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news, a little bit of television, a little bit of this and that along the way. We got a bunch of stuff to cover today. First of all, I'm going to be taking your guys' reactions and reviews and comments on Pacific Rim that, of course, opened this weekend. Speaking of Pacific Rim, it opened number 1 at the box office. But is it a hit? Black Panther becomes the number 1 comic book movie of all time domestically, and a few things more. But before we get any to that, let's go right off the top with this. Now, for some reason, there were these unfounded rumors going around that James Wan and Warner Brothers were going to be releasing an Aquaman teaser trailer. But no teaser trailer came. Now, Cinema Blend did an interesting story on why exactly we didn't get an Aquaman trailer yet, and it comes in the form of James Wan's own words, the director of Aquaman. So why is there no trailer yet? Well, according to James Wan, I am simply not ready yet to share. I love the bluntness of it. This movie is filled to the gills, get it, gills, with VFX. And the process is as slow and laborious as a sea slug. Get it? He said sea slug. Anyway, yes, even shots for the trailer take forever to do, and I refuse to put out anything that might be construed as subpar. So, of course, James Wan working feverishly on Aquaman. And, I remember having this discussion with some people last week about, why doesn't Warner Brothers have a trailer for Aquaman out yet? And my reply was, why would they? The movie doesn't come out till December. Number one, the movie doesn't even come out till December, okay? So it's still forever away. So we don't need an Aquaman trailer right now. Secondly, why would you put out an Aquaman trailer right now when you've got Deadpool coming out, you got Avengers Infinity War coming out, you still got Black Panther in theaters? Like, it would kind of make a big pop instantly, like right away, an Aquaman trailer would get a big pop, but that pop would be then kind of washed away. I get it? I did my own Aquaman pun. The pop would get washed away in the sea of all the Black Panther news and Avengers Infinity War coming out and Deadpool coming out. So what would be the strategic point of doing it? Also, James Wan makes a really good point. Look, considering the state of the DCEU, they really need to make, I'm about to make another Aquaman pun, they need to make a splash with this trailer. They really do. And I think James Wan and the people of Warner Brothers are handling this absolutely right. You want to make sure when you put out that first trailer, because normally what I say is a first trailer is just like an announcement. It's just a tease, so don't worry about it too much. But I think Warner Brothers knows, and James Wan knows, that there's a little bit more on the line here with the state of the DCEU. And therefore, if they want Aquaman to really make an impact, that first trailer has got to come out guns blazing. That first trailer has to come out guns blazing. And I love what James Wan said, saying, hey, look, I'm not putting out anything that's not the perfect trailer. I'm paraphrasing him here, but he says, I'm not putting out anything subpar. And besides that, there's no need to rush out an Aquaman trailer right now. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it doesn't come out till December. So personally, I like James Wan's words. I like the philosophy Warner Brothers seems to be employing here. There's no rush, no need to put out a trailer 7-8 months in advance at this point, especially right in the middle of all these huge comic book movies coming out. That's not the wise move. Plus, we want to make sure that this trailer for Aquaman is going to have all the impact it can. Now, that doesn't guarantee the trailer is going to be good. Not at all. Nothing's going to guarantee that. But I really do like the fact that they're saying they're going to take their time. They're going to put it out when they're damn well ready, and they're not feeling any need to rush. Now, none of that means that Aquaman's going to be a good movie, but it at least says, hey, they've got a straight level head on this. They're taking their time. They're going to give us the best thing that they can. Maybe it'll be bad. Maybe it'll be amazing. We'll have to wait and see. But no need for it to rush out a trailer right now when you don't need to. Okay, with that out of the way now, guys, before we get into the main topics, if you watch the John Campea Show, I like to make sure that you're at least caught up to date on all the significant things going on in the world of movie news. Even if we don't have time to go in depth on all of them, I at least want to make sure that you're in the know. So this is a little segment we do called the Movie News Feed. First up, Remember that awesome news last year about Donald Glover creating and producing an animated Deadpool show for Fox? Yeah, well, you can forget about it, as news has now come out that the partnership is now officially over. FX made the announcement official in the following statement that they put out. Due to creative differences, FX, Donald Glover, Stephen Glover, and Marvel Television have agreed to part ways on Marvel's Deadpool animated series. FX will no longer be involved with the project. FX and Marvel have an ongoing relationship through our partnership on Legion, which will continue. Floyd County, the animation company behind my personal favorite animated show on TV right now, Archer, was on board to handle the animation production for the Deadpool project. Although the show was scheduled to debut later this year, the series was not in active production, nor is it believed that any scripts had actually officially been delivered. It's really too bad. Next up, remember how Tintin was supposed to be a trilogy of films, but everything went quiet after the first one came out in 2011 despite doing pretty well at the box office and had positive reviews? Well, according to Steven Spielberg, he and Peter Jackson still intend on doing the next film. Eventually. Spielberg recently said the following: Peter Jackson has to do the second part. Normally, if all goes well, he will soon start working on the script. As it takes 2 years of animation work on the film, for you, I would not expect to see it for about 3 years. But Peter will stick to it. Tintin is not dead. Honestly, at this point, I'm kind of in a I'll believe it when I see it kind of mind when it comes to Tintin 2, no matter how much Jackson or Spielberg insist that it's coming. Next, speaking of animated sequels we've been patiently waiting for, according to reports, Girls Trip star Tiffany Haddish has officially signed on to perform one of the voices for the upcoming Lego Movie 2. The film will be directed by Trolls and Shrek Forever After director Mike Mitchell. Chris Pratt and Elizabeth Banks are returning as Emmett and Wildstyle, respectively. Will Arnett returns to voice Batman, Channing Tatum will return as Superman, and Jonah Hill does again come back to be Green Lantern. The first film was an amazing surprise. The fact that it didn't get nominated for Best Animated Film is still one of the biggest mysteries of the Oscars to me. Next up, fresh off of his very first Academy Award win, Gary Oldman and his co-star Gerard Butler have just been given a release date on their new upcoming action film, Hunter Killer. Lionsgate will release the film through their Summit Entertainment Company on October 26th of this year. Hunter Killer follows the story of an untested American submarine captain who teams with Navy SEALs to rescue the Russian president, who has been kidnapped by a rogue general. Now look, despite some questionable role decisions he's made, I'm actually a big Gerard Butler fan, and the idea of him and Gary Oldman together in an action film? I think that's pretty great. Next up, speaking of release dates, HBO just gave one to the upcoming Michael B. Jordan rendition of Fahrenheit 451. The film will debut on HBO on May 19th. Fahrenheit 451 depicts a future where the media is a narcotic, history is rewritten, and quote-unquote firemen burn books. Jordan is on a roll right now and plays a young fireman who forsakes his world and struggles to regain his humanity as he battles his mentor, Fire Captain Beatty, played by Michael Shannon. And finally, controversial filmmaker Nate Parker, director of the acclaimed film Birth of a Nation, and obviously nothing since then, has just signed on to direct the upcoming film Black and Blue. The film is a biopic of LAPD detective Ralph Wade's life and work as he investigates many high-profile cases, including the Watts riots, Robert Kennedy's assassination, and the Manson murders. The story will also delve into Wade's battle to get his father's approval while struggling between being black or blue in a racially charged time. Whether it was going undercover in the Black Panthers or finding the Skid Row slasher, no one, including his father, ever gave him the credit he earned and deserved. And that'll do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed. All right, and now you are all caught up to date with everything going on in the world of movie news. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's now get to the main topics. How do you guys submit a topic or a question for the John Campea Show? It's simple. Just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put that word topic in the subject line and make sure you keep those emails to 90 words or less, guys. All right, let's get things started here. And the first emailed in topic today comes to us from Mr. Yazman3000, who writes, recently, I read an article that Amazon will spend $500 million on their Lord of the Rings TV show. Well, we talked about it right here on the John Campea Show, actually. This also includes the $250 million that they spent to gain the rights, thus making it the most expensive TV show ever made. Do you think the show will be successful enough to recoup its budget? I don't think it will, even if the shows turn out to be good. All right, thanks a lot for the question. Yeah, we've been talking a lot recently about the fact that there's this, like, Amazon got the rights to Lord of the Rings. It's paid $250 million just for the rights. And now it's being reported that they're going to drop another $250 million to do the first season, ultimately making a budget of $500 million, making it the most expensive show ever. At least I think it is. Something's buzzing in the back of my head that something else might have been more expensive. But let's just go with that for now. Let's, for the sake of the argument, let's say it's the most expensive show ever made. Can it recoup that? Well, remember, this isn't like a movie that's being released in box office where how you figure out if it recoups its costs is doesn't make the money at the box office. I mean, it's kind of simple that way. With Amazon being a streaming service, there's several ways that Amazon can benefit from this Lord of the Rings show. What they're hoping is that this Lord of the Rings show kind of becomes, for it, what House of Cards did for Netflix. Now, look, a lot of people already had Netflix, but when House of Cards came out, and it was their original series, and Netflix dropped a lot of money, a whole hell of a lot of people who had never been Netflix subscribers then signed up to become Netflix subscribers because of that one show. And then that show kept them on board, and then they became monthly subscribers and now have been subscribers for 5 years. Right? So they are continuously benefiting, Netflix continuously benefits from the big hit that was House of Cards, because they got those people on board, they became subscribers, and those people remain subscribers for the ongoing. What they're hoping is that this show can be that for them, that this Lord of the Rings show can be their House of Cards, can be their Game of Thrones. Now, you might say, well, John, they already kind of had a very notable, award-winning show in Transparent on Amazon. Yes, but that wasn't a cultural shift show. That wasn't a show that, like, while it won a bunch of awards, it didn't get a massively huge audience. They're hoping that a show like this can get that big audience, but more importantly, bring in brand new subscribers, people who are not Amazon Prime subscribers to become Amazon Prime subscribers, and then hopefully they stay Amazon Prime subscribers even after the Lord of the Rings show is done. Thus, they continue to make money in the long run off the success of that. So that's how they're approaching this. That's how they're taking their approach to it. Will it work? We'll have to wait and see. If it's a big hit and people love it, it could be extremely lucrative for the streaming service. We'll just see how that turns out. All right, so let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Gourav, who writes, why was the box office opening for The Mummy panned off as disastrous, whereas Pacific Rim Uprising, coming off a much more recent sequel and a higher budget, is being labeled as a U.S. disappointment? In all possibility, Pacific Rim Uprising is going to end up quite a bit lower than The Mummy, even at the worldwide box office. Well, first of all, I don't think anybody is, saying that Pacific Rim is any kind of a hit. I don't think you're hearing anybody saying Pacific Rim is any kind of hit. Now, first of all, it should be noted, Pacific Rim just became the movie to finally top Black Panther at the box office. Yes, Black Panther is no longer the number one film at the box office this weekend at the box office. The weekend box office report came in like this. Pacific Rim took the number one spot at $28 million. Black Panther came in number two at $16.6 million. The faith-based film, I Can Only Imagine, holds on to its number 3 spot, making number $13.8 million. Sherlock Gnomes debuted at $10.6 million, and Tomb Raider came in with $10.4 million. Taking a pretty good drop from last week, actually. So we have Pacific Rim, number one box office movie in the world, or at least North America, for the weekend. Great. That means it's a success, right? Well, no, not really. Even though it's the number one film at the box office, this $28 million cannot be looked at as good. Now, first of all, let's put this into context. Let's look at the first Pacific Rim movie. The first Pacific Rim movie barely broke even by the skin of its teeth. Just by the skin of its teeth, it broke even. Well, let's take a look at how this Pacific Rim Uprising, despite coming in number one at the box office this weekend, finally topping Black Panther. What a run Black Panther's had. We'll talk about the Black Panther run in just a second. But is it a good result? Well, let's take a look at this. The first Pacific Rim movie actually had an opening weekend box office of $37 million, with finishing off with a total of $411 million. Again, at a budget of almost about $190 million Pacific Rim's budget was, $411 million represents them barely breaking even. Barely breaking even. Okay, so let's look at the next number here. Pacific Rim Uprising. Its opening weekend is only $28 million. That is 29% lower than what Pacific Rim opened with. 29% lower. We sometimes talk about trajectory. What you'd like to see trajectory is an upward trajectory. And it's not like the first Pacific Rim had this huge opening weekend. Because like if the first Pacific Rim, say, had a $150 million opening weekend, well, that's huge. Then you don't really mind a 29% drop for opening weekend because that first opening weekend was so massive. The first Pacific Rim weekend only made $38 million. This Pacific Rim Uprising makes $28 million, goes down 29% from an already low opening weekend from the first one. So now this is not necessarily true, but if you want to do some projection, with it opening to 29% lower than the first one, then the projection would be that Pacific Rim Uprising could finish at around $290 million. But that's worldwide. On a budget of $150 million, that does not have it breaking even. That doesn't have it breaking even. So it finishes down 29% from an already relatively low opening weekend from the first one. And the first one only went on to make 411. And here's the other thing to keep in mind. The first one had really good word of mouth. People enjoyed the first Pacific Rim. People liked that movie. They had a good time with it. They celebrated it and all that kind of stuff. That's not so much the case with this one, unfortunately. I didn't think it was a terrible movie. I don't think Pacific Rim Uprising is a terrible movie. But it's also not something that satisfied me as an audience member. But we'll talk a little bit more about your guys' reaction to Pacific Rim in a second. So I don't hear people, like you're saying, well, people pan the Mummy's box office result. Why are they saying that this one's okay? Well, people aren't really saying this one's okay. It is a disappointment. This isn't when they first decided to make a Pacific Rim Uprising, they weren't thinking $28 million opening weekend. That's not what they were thinking. They were not thinking we're going to open this thing to 20. They were hoping to open this thing to 55 or 60 or $70 million. Put John Boyega in there. Big monster movie, big robot movie, building off the success of the first one. Doesn't seem to have turned out that way, and we're just going to have to see whether those projections hold up or maybe it can pick up some legs. But like I'm saying, the word of mouth I'm hearing, I don't think it's going to have big legs. So I wouldn't hold our breath for Pacific Rim 3 at any point. All right, let's move on now to the third topic. Speaking of Black Panther, and this third topic comes to us from Jessica Millan, who writes, I guess it's official now that Black Panther is the all-time #1 domestic box office comic book movie of all time as it just passed the Avengers. I know we've all said, no one thought it would do this well 100 times, but wow, it's worth saying again. What would the over-under have been on Black Panther passing Avengers? And yeah, for those of you guys who probably saw the headline in this, it's now official. Domestically speaking, whenever you're talking about box office numbers, there's always two categories. One is domestic, one is worldwide, and we'll get to that in a second. But domestically, in the US box office, the biggest box office market in the world, Black Panther has now passed Avengers, the first Avengers movie. Never would we have thought that. Let's take a look at the all-time domestic totals here. Marvel's The Avengers has now been bumped out of the #5 all-time spot domestically. It was the #1 comic book movie domestically, box office-wise, all time. It is now down in 6th place and the second biggest comic book movie domestically because the Black Panther has just surpassed it. It is now not just the top comic book movie box office-wise domestically, it's the #5 all-time of any genre. So let's just keep looking at this list here. It might even have a chance to catch Jurassic World. Not so sure about that, but it may. Titanic is an outside shot as well. It's never going to catch Avatar, and never in a million years is it going to catch Star Wars The Force Awakens, but it does pass Marvel's The Avengers. And when you ask me, what would we have said the over-under is, 6 months ago, that this Black Panther movie that's coming out When it comes out, it will pass the Avengers as the #1 comic book movie of all time domestically. The over-under, I probably would have set it at 5%. If I'm going to be honest with you, I could sit here and say, oh, no, I think deep down I can't. No. I honestly would have set the number at like maybe 5, maybe 4% at most. I don't even think Chadwick Boseman would have taken the over on that 6 months ago of it passing the Avengers. I mean, the successful run of Black Panther is just historic. I mean, this is just crazy. Now, I mentioned that when we're talking box office, there are often two categories. There's the domestic, but then there is worldwide. Worldwide, Black Panther has not passed the Avengers. Okay, we're talking when you take the entire global, including domestic and the rest of the world, Black Panther is actually the number 12 biggest film of all time. But you can see it's actually behind two other comic book movies. It's behind Avengers Age of Ultron in the number 7 spot at 1.405 billion. I don't think it's going to catch Ultron. And then up in the number 5 spot is Marvel's The Avengers at 1.518. It's never going to catch that. So while it is the number 1 comic book movie all time box office wise, domestically, it's actually the number 3 all time worldwide. But then again, who would have ever thought that this little Black Panther movie would be the number 3 comic book movie of all time worldwide? Domestically, it's now number 1. Worldwide, it's number 3. It's just an incredible run. Just an incredible run for Black Panther. So yeah, just let's look at the films that are ahead of it. You're talking Beauty and the Beast. It'll probably catch Beauty and the Beast for the number 11 spot. Frozen, it has a shot of catching Frozen. Star Wars The Last Jedi, it has a chance to catch Star Wars The Last Jedi, but at this point in its run, it's still 100 million behind, probably won't. Probably won't catch Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 2, but look at these films. Ultron, Fast and Furious 7, Avengers, Jurassic World, Force Awakens, Titanic, Avatar. Black Panther is now in the conversation with all these films. The number 12 all-time worldwide. The number 5 all-time domestic, the number 1 domestic comic book movie of all time, and the number 3 comic book movie worldwide of all time. As we're winding finally down to the end of the Black Panther run, this is historic. I mean, this is unprecedented. And now, for a little character that was at best a B-level character, to have this kind of success is just outstanding. Just outstanding. And now it sets the stage for Avengers Infinity War, and we'll see what Avengers Infinity War can do. All right, guys, that will do it for all the emailed in questions. Now, before we go to the live questions today, I have, of course, been using this little service. I've been telling you guys about it called Stardust. And I love the Stardust app. You guys know I've been turning down a bunch of sponsors because either I don't use what it is they're selling, even if they're pretty good, I don't use them, or I don't think they'd be useful to you guys, my viewers. But the Stardust app is something a little bit different. You use the app, it gives you a really easy way to record 3 to 30 second reviews and reactions to share online. And here's the great part about it, what we're going into here. If you use the app to record your review, all you do is record it, hit the little next or edit button, and then tag me on your screen, just simply at John Campea, all one word. And that way I will see your reviews and reactions, because I like to share, you guys know I've been looking for a long time to share your video responses to things here on the show. So now, last week, I gave you guys some homework, and I asked you guys to send me your thoughts on Pacific Rim once you had a chance to see it. And some of them are okay, some of them not so good, but here's some of the reviews that you guys sent in to me that I picked out. This is your thoughts on Pacific Rim.
I don't know what I watched. He doesn't know what he watched. This was an experience. It was entertaining when it came to the action, but honestly, this felt like a spoof movie. Like, I tried looking at it as like a really bad anime, like mecha anime, because I'm a really big anime fan, but it just didn't even live up to that standard. It was really shitty. Don't see it.
There were problems with this movie, but I had fun with it. I didn't like the interaction between John Boyega and the lead female character, and I face-palmed when they did that thing with Charlie Day's character. But once you got into the third act with the robots actually fighting the monsters, I thought that was done pretty well.
Okay, so Pacific Rim Uprising is a worse version of every single movie it is ripping off, pretending to be, and wishes it was. How do you take the originality of a Guillermo del Toro anime ode and love letter and turn it into generic action movie number 12? It's not worth anyone's time to see. It isn't art. It's just meh.
It was a good movie. I liked it. It had a lot of good laughs in it. Some good action. Not as good as the first one. Definitely something I'd wait for your streaming service, but otherwise a good movie.
But very mixed feelings about Pacific Rim Uprising. It didn't amaze me as the first one did, but the standout in the movie to me is John Boyega. And let's face it, the last time I saw him, he was in Canto Bight. So everything he does after that is, just a triumph.
I thought it was all right. I really liked the idea of what they did with the kaiju and stuff, but it just fell flat.
I thought it was true to what I expected to see, so on that level I enjoyed it. It wasn't particularly deep, it wasn't particularly emotionally moving, but it was good, a good spectacle.
Just saw Pacific Rim Uprising, and it's an okay movie. It has monsters and robots and a lot of fighting. The action is really good in this movie. The CGI is really good as well. It's not like the older one with Guillermo. It's more bright, which I like that because I can see more of the robot. I enjoyed it. My son enjoyed the movie. So the storyline is kind of weak. The bad guy is kind of a twist, and I like that twist. So this is a movie that if you like fighting and robots and monsters, go see it. You'll enjoy yourself.
Pacific Rim Uprising was okay, not great. It's basically what you expect from the trailers. I wasn't too excited for the movie, but it was pretty good overall. It's what I expected to see from this movie. The young girl, I forget her name, I think it was Amani in the movie. She was pretty good. It's great to see John Boyega in anything but Star Wars. He's got a lot of charisma, but he's not quite there as an action lead yet.
Pacific Rim Uprising is actually fine. I enjoyed it, not as much as the first one, but the action is the best part of it. I love seeing the fights between the Jaegers and the kaiju, which are shot in daylight, so you can actually see what's going on. I thought that was really cool, and John Boyega is actually pretty good in the lead role, pretty charismatic, but some of the characters are one note, and some things just happen, and they keep going on, and they don't explain it, but if you know what you're getting into, you might enjoy it.
All right, guys, so thank you to all of you guys who sent them in. Those are just some of my favorites. And so, guys, listen, next, of course, little homework assignment for you guys. First of all, make sure you download the Stardust app. You can find the link in the description of this video. So download the app. Send me your recommendations. Tell me about things you're watching right now. Tell me what little hidden gems of TV shows or movies that maybe you're not aware of that you really want to recommend. Something you think is underrated. Send those in to me, and maybe you'll see your video pop up here on the John Campea Show. All right, with all that out of the way now, I got about 10 minutes left here to take some of your live questions. Guys, don't send any more questions in if you haven't already. And any questions I don't get around to today, don't worry. Your question will get answered in the companion video a little bit later. So if I don't have time to get to the question you sent in, don't worry. It will be on the companion video a little bit later today. All right, let's get things rolling with this. First one comes to us from Curtis Lopez, who writes, I personally would like to thank you and all Canadians for giving us Informer by Snow. Informer, blah, 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 boom, boom, dia. That's basically it. I mean, I used to roller skate to that song all the time, and I would hear it like 1,000 times a day. And that's seriously the only words that I knew that was coming out of this kid's mouth. Informer and boom, boom, dia. That's it. That's everything else. I had no idea what the kid was saying, but it was quite a popular song. It's a shame that that's our contribution of Canadian culture to the world. Informer. Boom, boom, dia. Okay, listen. Next one comes to us from Murray for Us, who writes, did they stop making rated G movies? I don't think they've stopped making rated G movies. I just think they realized that, hey, you know what? We can make movies that appeal to kids, but also that have appeal to adults. That means having some slightly more mature themes, like nothing R-rated or anything like that. But when we can make a movie that also appeals to adults, like a Coco, like Moana, when we can put in themes that make it enjoyable for adults as well, we can have even more success. And sometimes that means going beyond the G rating. I don't think that anybody set a rule that we don't make G-rated movies anymore, but why would you? If you can introduce some themes and everything that you think kids can handle and make it a little bit more appealing for parents as well, why not do that and go for the PG, the light PG? So again, I don't think it's a rule. I just think it's just the movies they're making right now. Kylis Menon writes, have you ever sent a fan mail to a celebrity? A fan mail to a celebrity. I was rummaging around my house yesterday and found the response to my fan letter Lucasfilm sent to me in July of 2005. Chills, that is awesome. You know what? I don't think I ever have sent a fan letter. But I'm kind of pissed off that I did now because I'm feeling really envious and jealous that you got a letter from Lucasfilm to be. I've had a chance to visit Lucasfilm and everything, but that would be so awesome to send out a fan letter and get a response. It's a lost art now, I guess. The art of the fan letter. Remember how TV shows would do that old things like, when they would show a celebrity saying, getting their fan mail, and they bring in these big bags of paper mail and jumping out. I was like, this fan mail. I guess that's a lost art now. In the days of text messages and Twitter and email, that's a lost art. But you know what? No, now that I think about Kylis, I don't think I've ever myself sent out a fan email, or a fan letter, I should say, even when I was a kid. Maybe I just didn't know how to write. I mean, that might have been it. But that is a treasure. You framed that sucker, man. You got a response from Lucasfilm. You framed that sucker. Unless it's like unless you were kind of abusing it and they go, and they say, hey, this is a cease and desist letter. In that case, maybe you shouldn't do it. All right, don't frame that one. All right, next one comes to us from Rodrigo Ortiz, who writes, have you seen the movie My Cousin Vinny? Just saw it yesterday and it was brilliantly funny. Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei were both so great. Don't forget the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio was in that. Matter of fact, My Cousin Vinny, which is hilarious and amazing, it was nominated for one Academy Award and it won that one Academy Award. And that was Marissa Tomei winning her Best Supporting Actress Academy. A lot of people forget she's an Academy Award winning actress, and that's the movie that she won her Academy Award for. It's brilliant. If you haven't seen My Cousin Vinny, you absolutely should. Rodrigo, that is one you should use the Stardust app to do a recommendation for. Thanks for bringing it up. AFK 2010 writes, could a film like Bohemian Rhapsody take back some of the popularity Queen lost in America after 1980? And what's your view on Bryan Singer claiming that the movie is his? Much money at stake here? Well, Bryan Singer's claiming that it's his because, remember, they didn't fire Bryan Singer off the movie before they were already well into production on this movie. He oversaw all the pre-production, set the film up, blah, blah, and already started filming a bunch of it. And I think they were getting close to the end of it. And then they fired him. Bryan Singer, this is going to be one of those situations where, remember, whenever there's a dispute, the studio doesn't get to decide who the director of credit is. The Directors Guild of America does. And this is going to be one of those situations, it sounds like, that probably Bryan Singer will bring this to the Directors Guild of America and get them to make a ruling on this. Because yes, there is a lot of money at stake. If Bryan Singer is the director of record, then he's entitled to a certain percentage of this and certain fees and certain payments. If he's not the director of record, he can lose out on a lot of that. So yes, there is big money on the line for this. I can totally understand why Bryan Singer would be making the argument that it's his movie. He should be the director of record. And I think the studio, I believe Fox is the studio in this case, is going to have a very, very difficult time convincing any type of a tribunal board at the Directors Guild of America that he shouldn't be the director of record. If he did all the work, like a good chunk of the work on it, he'll probably still get his director credit. And there is a lot of money on the line, so maybe they'll fight it, maybe they won't. But this is going to be a very, very interesting scenario to see develop over the long haul. Alexander Helmer writes, favorite Injustice 2 character to play with? I like Batman. Well, it's stereotypical to say, but so do I. I mean, Batman is any game you give me. If I have a character choice to play, I'm going to play Batman. Other than Luke Skywalker. I mean, you drop Luke Skywalker in Injustice Gods Among Us, I'll take Luke Skywalker. But other than that, you drop him in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. You put Batman in a Far Cry game. You put Batman in Fortnite. You put Batman in, Witcher 3, whatever. I will always take the Batman character. So that is always my favorite character to play. Camilio 10 writes, should Boyega get a bigger role in episode 9, similar to episode 7? On the back of Pacific Rim in episode 7, he carries more star power and charisma than... Oh, my friend Camilio, who told you that? Who told you that Boyega has more star power right now than Daisy Ridley? I disagree with you on that, especially on the back of Pacific Rim that only opened to $28 million. down 30%, almost 30% from the first Pacific Rim, and is not charting to do great. And besides that, even if Pacific Rim was a big hit, you don't change your movie to fit the actor. The actors are there to serve the movie. The movie is not there to serve the actors. You are simply a producer. If you're a producer out there and you're a producer of a show and you change your story around to fit the celebrity status of who your cast member is, then you failed as a producer. You know who tried to do that? The Office. When Steve Carell left The Office, that show could have continued to succeed because it had all these great characters that everybody loved. But you know what they did? Well, without Steve Carell here, who should become the main lead of the show now? You know who we should go with? That movie, The Hangover, is really big and popular, and Ed Helms is in that. Ed Helms is really hot right now. Let's make him the focus of the show. And that destroyed the show. It destroyed their show. No, they should not change. They should go with what their story is. Whether you like the story or not, whether I like the story or not, whatever, they need to go with what their story is. And then the actors serve the story. You don't change your movie to suit the actor. That's what The Office did. They try to go, oh, Ed Helms is really popular right now. Let's forget Jim, who's been like the most beloved character and the central figure on this show, arguably other than Michael Scott since the beginning. Forget that. Ed Helms is hot right now, so let's make the show about Ed Helms. And it ruined their show. It wasn't Steve Carell leaving that ruined the show. It was them making the Ed Helms character the focus of the show. That's what killed the show. So anyway, no, they should not change around the movie just to kind of suit a particular actor. I don't think they should ever do that. Maha Norbai writes, do you think The Lion King will add new songs? If I'm not mistaken, I think they are. Everybody in the chat board, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they've already said, like Elton John has already said, that they are composing a couple of new pieces for the new movie version, which I'm excited about. So I could be wrong about that, but I think that they are. Everybody in the chat board, this is why we have a film fan community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they are doing some new numbers. Shemanth writes, hey John, was there any other genre / type of movie in the history of cinema as popular as superhero movies? You might be able to make an argument that at one point, like the Western ruled the movies maybe more than any other genre of movie. That there was a period of time that the genre was Western. It was maybe even more dominant than comic book movies. Clearly not making the same money that comic book movies are now. But there may be an era where you could say that the Western was the all-powerful genre. Obviously before our time. Warren Lucas writes, John Wick 3 set for release in May 2019. Your thoughts on the series, and should Chapter 3 be PG-13 to expand the audience and box office? I hope not. Well, I love the series. I didn't think John Wick 2 was quite as good as the first John Wick, but I enjoyed John Wick 2 immensely anyway. So I love the series and I love the franchise. Should they change it to PG-13? No, I mean, that would completely change the DNA of what the series is. I mean, look, if the John Wick series is already kind of marginally rated R, then I would go, well, then sure, why not try PG-13? If it's already just marginally rated R and all you gotta do is change it 3 or 4% to get the PG-13 rating, then why not? But the fact of the matter is the DNA of John Wick is a very, very hard R DNA. To make the John Wick series now a PG-13 series would be to radically change the DNA. You know, it's not like Die Hard. They did a Die Hard film PG-13, and I always thought that was fine because you know what? Die Hard was always marginally R-rated. I mean, you just change a couple of minor things and it's really not all that bad. In my opinion, at any rate, like even the first, I look at the first one, I think, okay, I don't consider the first one a hard R movie. I think there's a lot of stuff you can get away with in a strong PG-13 film. But John Wick is different. John Wick is, in its DNA, it's a hard R with all the violence. So, no, I don't see them, and I haven't heard any talk about them maybe even considering moving that thing to a PG-13. All right, just three more quick ones, and we'll call it a day. Fan from India, since AMC, call me Sham, just to make it easier. Well, appreciate that, Sham, because I am terrible with names. MuseTac Reviews writes, you caught up on Gotham? Thoughts on the most recent episode? Well, I don't know if the last episode I saw is the most recent one or not. If I am behind, I'm only behind by one episode. So the one I saw was where Jim gets shot like 5 times. Good episode. Solid episode. Enjoyed it. Liked it a lot. No more like Batman illusions, which I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Last question I'm going to take today. And again, guys, if you've sent in a live question, don't worry, it will get addressed on the companion video a little bit later. Last live question here today. With Rebels being canon and Obi-Wan already killing Maul in Rebels, could we see Savage Opress as the villain in the Obi-Wan spinoff, with Opress looking to kill Obi-Wan and avenge Maul? I can't remember off the top of my head how Savage's storyline ends in Clone Wars. I can't remember how his story, I can't remember if he lives or dies in Clone Wars. Anyway, either way, it would be that would be a bit of a deep cut. I don't know if they would go that way for it. Although it does give you a Force user then to use as a villain to Obi-Wan, so it's an interesting idea. I have a feeling it might be something totally different, though. I have a feeling they did. I mean, is it possible? Maybe. Again, it all depends on how his storyline resolved in the Clone Wars series, because I cannot for the life of me remember how his storyline resolves in Clone Wars. But he's definitely a very cool character, but you also run the risk of him just looking like, to the average movie-going audience who didn't watch Clone Wars, as a little bit of a Darth Maul knockoff. So you run the risk of that, so I don't know if they do it, but it's a possibility, and it's certainly a valid theory at this point. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today for this installment of the John Campea Show. Listen, while you're here, guys, don't forget to click the subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. And guys, listen, if you enjoy watching my program, do me a favor, head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. Find out all the information about what it means to be one of my Patreon supporters, how being a Patreon supporter of mine keeps these shows on the air, and more importantly, what advantages there are to being a Patreon supporter. For instance, audio-only versions of the podcasts of all these shows that aren't available to everybody else. You also have this great active Facebook group that we have for the John Campea Show that's exclusive for our Patreon members. Anyway, go read about it, and maybe you'll decide to be a Patreon supporter too, which would be awesome if you did. Listen, guys, also, make sure you're following me on Twitter, simply @JohnCampea. Download that Stardust app. Start sending me your reactions and reviews as well. Maybe you'll see your ugly mug pop up on the John Campea Show to go right alongside my ugly mug. All right, guys, that'll do it for me. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.